to make you a video on the preterits. So hopefully this will help you to make a little sense of what might become a little bit of a difficult topic. So let's start with, what is a preterit? So in English, we just have the past tense, right? I bought, I went, I did, and these are concrete kind of past tenses. If we want to talk about something that was a condition in the past, then what we do is we add other additional things to it, right? We would say, I might have bought, I was going to buy, I had bought, different things like this, but we add little helping words in to tell us what was happening in that past. So in Spanish, obviously, it does not work like that at all. So we have definitive pasts that tell us things that are happening in the past. In general, we have 3 different ways of talking about the past. Now we have some other things that we can use to also talk about the past, like conditionals and subjunctives, but we don't get into those in this class. We have a 3rd way that we would talk about the past, which we also don't get into in this class, which is called the past perfect, but we don't deal with that in the course of this class. So what we only talk about in this class is how to talk about things that are happening in a preterit and how to talk about things that are happening in an imperfect. These are 2 ways of saying that we did something in a past. Now for now, all we need to know is we use the preterit to talk about past actions. So instead of saying compro, I want to say, which would be saying I buy or I was buying, we would say compré, indicating I bought it before. Instead of saying bailo, I'm dancing now, we want to be able to learn how to say I danced in the past, bailé, right? So that's what this preterit is kind of teaching us how to do. It's teaching us how to talk about things that occurred in a past action. So for now, what we're just going to focus on is how to conjugate the preterit, and we'll look at differences between things like preterit versus the imperfect later on in the term. For now, all we need to know, right, is that the preterit is a way that we talk about actions in the past in Spanish. And so similar to how the present tense had different categories, that is to say, different ways that either the stem mutated or didn't mutate, changed or didn't change, the preterit also has those categories. So the preterit has a regular category, that is to say, verbs that don't change in the stem. It has an irregular yo category, that is to say, verbs that stem change only in the yo form. It has a stem changing category, that is to say, verbs that must change in the stem and then be conjugated. And then it also has an irregular category. Now we're going to save these 3 other categories to talk about at a later time. Right now, all we're going to do is focus on regular stem changing verbs. Now, if you remember, whenever we talked about present tense verbs, we said, right, that a verb can be dissected in Spanish into 2 different sections, right? It has the stem, right, the habl of hablar, right, or the comp of comprar, and then it's got the AR, the ER, the IR, the part that tells us it's in an infinitive, that is to say it's not expressing an action. So we learned how to take off that ending, how to take off the AR, the ER, and the IR, and then we learned that by putting a new ending on it, we were indicating that that action was happening in the present and it was being done by a particular subject. Remember, right, that when we learned about present tense verbs, we learned that the endings are telling us where we are in time and the subject that is doing the action, right, and who is speaking. So, okay, so if we think about the preterit then, it makes sense that we have to learn a whole new set of endings, and these endings are going to indicate to us that we are in the past, and not just that we are in the past, but that we are in a preterite past. So it's very important that we start to adopt these new endings, and the new endings again are going to tell us where we are in time, in this case not in the present but in a preterite past, and it's also going to tell us who is the subject that's doing the action. So similar to how we did present tense verbs, we will take these endings and we will use them to start to do things or talk about things in the past. So if I had a verb like comprar, I would take off the AR, and now I'm just going to put on these new endings that tell me that I'm doing something in a preterite past. So instead of saying compro, which would be indicating that I'm saying something in the present, I would say compré. So I'm not saying I buy, but I bought, like I said before. So this would be yo compré, I bought, tú compraste, you bought, él, ella, usted compró, he, she, it bought. Nosotros compramos, we bought. Vosotros comprasteis, y'all bought. Ellos, ellas, ustedes compraron, they bought. So notice that in English, all of these verbs would be expressed with one verb. We would just use the word bought. But notice again, like we noticed whenever we were thinking about the present, that none of these are interchangeable and none of them are reused. So that means we can only use each one time, and we must match it with the subject that we're talking about. So it's very important that those two things go hand in hand. So now we would do the same with ER and IR verbs. Now the only thing that makes the preterite a little bit easier is that you'll notice ER and IR verbs have the same endings in the preterite. So here, right, we have an ER verb, but it would have the same endings as this IR verb over here. So yo aprendí, I learned, tú aprendiste, you learned, él, ella, usted aprendió, he, she learned, nosotros aprendimos, we learned, vosotros aprendisteis, y'all learned, ellos, ellas, ustedes aprendieron, they learned. And the same with recibir. Yo recibí, I received, tú recibiste, you received, él, ella, usted recibió, he, she received, nosotros recibimos, we received, vosotros recibisteis, y'all received, and ellos, ellas, ustedes recibieron, they received. So again, right, we're noticing that all of those verbs tend to look a little bit the same, but they're all different endings. So all we're doing is just folding in a new type of ending that we're learning, but basically we're doing the same process that we were doing before whenever we were doing present tense verbs. Now we're just adding on another type of ending that is going to indicate to us that whatever action it is that was taking place in the past. I hope that helps to make a little bit of sense. The next video that you'll learn for next week will be on these two categories, irregular yo verbs and stem changers. Thanks, and I hope you have a great week.